And a very good morning to you. We're live in London and Zurich. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson, and in Dufourstrasse 90, making a surprise and most welcome appearance, holding the fort, is our editorial director, Tyler Brulé. Welcome, Tyler.
Good morning, Emma. It's a new format today, properly co-anchored. I'm not on a phone up the mountains on a terrace in Lisbon. Here in a very sunny, very fresh Zurich. We had quite a downpour about 5 or 6 hours ago. And Emma, we're going to make this up as we go along today.
Absolutely, and we can't see each other either, so this is going to be absolute chaos. In London, we've got our guests. We've got Terry Stiastny and David Bodanis. Good morning to you both. Terry, what have you spotted?
Good morning. Well, interesting this weekend. A lot of talk, obviously, about tariffs, Donald Trump and how to handle him, particularly from the new British ambassador, Peter Mandelson.
Thank you very much indeed for that. We'll be heading to Helsinki too from the headlines for our correspondent there, Petri Bertsov.
Teslas still sell like hotcakes in Norway, Finland told to cut down on seal hunting, and criminals in Estonia can no more change their names to begin a new life.
That will be Petri Bertsov a little bit later on. Plus, Ed Stocker will join us on the line from Merano to talk about parties. It's the 13th of July 2025. Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday with Emma Nelson.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are fastening our seatbelts and putting our armrests down because we've never done this before, have we, Tyler? We've never double-headed with the guests in London and you in Zurich. It's usually the other way around. How are we doing?
We're very well. Good morning, Emma. This is a completely new experience. It's not like we haven't sort of co-anchored properly before, but there's been more nets and wires when we've done it. This is something that was a bit on the fly, just for our listeners to know that I was supposed to be in Merano today, or at least this morning, and yesterday as well. It was the 10th anniversary, Emma, of our outlet there. So huge party, a good deployment of our team there, and of course readers and locals and patrons from all over the world showed up. But some issues, we will say, kept me in Zurich, and here I am this morning. And
we are glad to have you with us. This is wonderful. So what's the view from Zurich this morning?
Well, the view from Zurich is, of course, we're in the midst of studio. Desi, is this Studio 4 or 5? It's Studio 4 in Zurich. Because, as you know, there's a numbering system. I believe you're in Studio 1. It'd be very cozy if you're in Studio 2 in Zurich. Studio 3 is Tokyo. That's right. Zurich is 4, and Paris is Studio 5. So, Jonathan Ducrest is here, of course, one of our patrons and regular fans. He's front row. There are some loud children out front. I think they've been expelled now. So hopefully it's going to be a reasonably quiet show in the background, but it's absolutely rammed outside. So if you go sort of beyond the studio space here in Zurich, it is an absolutely gorgeous. It is a very fresh morning, but warm. But it's just, you don't just have those summer downpours, and it just clears everything. And that was it. It really felt like you were in Indonesia at about 4 a.m. this morning. It was quite something, and it's absolutely gorgeous, sunny, and but I think the thunderstorms will be back early evening because that's just the time of year that it is.
I think we have exactly the same situation here in London. It's been a sweltering week. Let me introduce our panellists, David Bodanis and Terry Stiastny, jumping into the Making It Up as We Go Along programme. A very good morning to you both. Good morning, David. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
What's up? Good. So you're going to have to say a bit more if we're going to do an hour's worth of radio. What's your week been like?
Elaborating is my middle name. Being the last child in a large family, the chance to talk is a wonderful thing. What I noticed this week, it was really hot in London for a few days, and I noticed people are beginning to change their attitude towards the heat. It used to be, there's this awful random thing comes up, and I might open the windows at night, as opposed to people thinking, ooh, do I have to install air conditioning? Is this going to be permanent? Am I going to change the whole attitude?
Okay. Terry, how was your week?
Similar. I had a lovely couple of days in Cornwall last week where I was at a literary festival talking about my new book, which was great, and then got back to sort of hot London and a sort of level of domestic chaos where things are getting fixed. But it's all I find it a bit easier to bear in the hot weather because you're kind of thinking, oh, the cooker's not working, but we can use the barbecue. So it does make life a bit easier on that thing. It's sort of cycling around London is one of the joys, I think, of London in this heat because you're kind of out there in the fresh air, and I think everybody's suddenly doing doing it.
The brain is half empty in the heat. It's a glorious but rather unproductive state to be in. Tyler, I was in Manchester this weekend. I was on your old stomping ground. I was staying in a hotel opposite the old Manchester BBC building, the Oxford Road building, which has been turned...
Still there, or has that been condemned? That has to be long gone.
It's been turned into the most horrible set of flats. Apologies to the people who might have designed it. But there's a sort of an internal space where you can sit around and drink and what have you. But it's just a block of ugly flats again. And I got very, very sad when I saw that. But I tell you something, Manchester has got an energy that you cannot replicate. I had completely forgotten how good Manchester is in terms of getting around, getting stuff done, and generally people being very, very up. I mean, I went to get
Did someone sedate you on the train on the way up?
Absolutely not.
What happened?
So I was there not for Oasis, but everybody else was, which made it quite fun. But just to give you an example of how up for it people are, every time you asked for something to be done, it was done with goodwill and happiness and just like, yes, how can we help you? And then the sense of the giddiness that Oasis was bringing to the city was permeated right through everything. When I went to the Co-op opposite the old Oxford Road building, I went to buy a couple of snacks and the fella forgot the amount he was going to charge me. And I said, "Are you all right?" And he went, "I've got tickets for Oasis. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. And I don't know how to do my job anymore." I mean, that sense of happiness and giddiness. Tyler, I think a visit back to Manchester is well overdue. I know you might have, I can sense eyebrows are being raised in Dufourstrasse 90 at the moment.
I'm trying to think. Does Swiss still fly to Manchester? I believe they do. I think you're going to have to take me with you, or you're going to need another 2 hours of this program to convince me why we should do it. Listen, I've been back since the early '90s. I still wasn't fully convinced. But listen, I imagine that was the sun out, Emma?
Yes, it was boiling hot.
It was about 25 degrees.
It was about 30. They did it. And even better that I was talking to the chief executive of Manchester Airport and he said, we are just growing and growing and growing and growing. And they're launching huge new flights out to India, out to the Middle East. They're actually stepping up in a way that I think they're sort of just quietly getting on with it. And he said, look, airport capacity is a major problem down in London. Everybody's complaining about that and wanting to do Heathrow Airport. He said, just come to Manchester. We've got the space, we've got the runway, we've got the capacity, and we can do it. It was a real sort of, not fighting talk, but that real sense of, forget them down south. We're just going to get on with it anyway, and we're not waiting for anybody.
I feel that at the next garden party at Midori House, you're going to be lobbying senior management for maybe a move to Manchester.
I'm just handing out bucket hats. Can you imagine?
Somewhat.
Right, let's have a look at what's happening in the papers. Actually, no, let's not do that. You can tell we're making this up, ladies and gentlemen. We head now to Merano, our outpost. Tyler, explain the Merano setup for those of us who might not have been, and then we'll connect to Ed Stocker, who's the man who'll fill us in.
So let's rewind 10 years ago. I'd purchased a place in this wonderful city in Südtirol. There's an area in a district within Merano. We're talking about a city of around 70 or 80,000 people. It's it's barely a city. And there's a wonderful district called Obermais, and it has a very sort of small high street. And every day when I was walking back and forth to buy bread or get yogurt or buy the newspapers, there was this wonderful little, you could say sort of sanitary ware shop, sort of former plumbers. It was empty. It looked sort of a bit sad. And one day I thought, this could just be a great little pop-up shop, and it would be wonderful to do a Monocle outpost there for maybe 2 or 3 months. Went and spoke to the family. Great rent. Sort of fast forward 10 years, we're still there. It's the longest running pop-up ever, and it could only happen because of Linda Egger, who runs the show there. And I probably open 10 months of the year. And it's an absolutely wonderful space, but the summer party has really become something of a thing, and it really sort of marks, you could say, sort of the start of the season, not just in that district, but I think for Europe in general. And so it was the 10th anniversary last night. People descended from all over the world. I don't want to take too much thunder away from our Ed Stocker, our Milan correspondent, who's going to tell us more about it. Anyway, I was supposed to be there, but I said lots of representation from the rest of the team. And Ed, maybe good morning, guten Morgen, buongiorno. Tell us a little bit about what unfolded.
I loved my introduction, by the way. I'm here to talk about parties, so that's quite an enviable task, isn't it? I have to say, I might have a slight headache today. No, it was a great party. Yeah, there was a little bit of rain about, but then that was yesterday morning. That all cleared. The sun came out. It was perfect weather. And as you say, Tyler, yeah, people from all over the world. I got a chance to catch up, for example, with Pooja and Akshay from Dubai, who I met when we were doing our Entrepreneur's Guide to Dubai. And they come to Merano every year, escaping the heat in Dubai. They come to the mountains. So it was great to see them. They possibly won the prize for the people who travel the furthest for the party. But yeah, there was good representation from people all over the world. Nice to meet some people in person that I talked to. Trying to plan a story in Puglia. There's this lovely couple I'd sort of had a chat with on the phone, and they were there last night. Meredith, a friend from Milan who runs Dolladera Drinks, and they were dishing out some of their drinks last night. So yeah, there was a good representation from Switzerland, of course, and Austria as well, and lots of people from Italy. So it was a really lovely international crowd of people who appreciate Monocle, who appreciate Merano, spilling out into the street and enjoying cocktails, and a phenomenal production of focaccia, I might add, from Martin from Ottman, who was there in the kitchen just producing an incredible amount. So he did a fantastic job. And as you say, Linda helming everything, who's been there since the beginning, right, Tyler? She's just this incredible character, so kind and generous, and just everyone adores her who's there at the party as well. So I don't think the shop in Merano could be what it is without her.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, you've met Linda on many occasions here in Zurich. Well, almost that's the great thing about Linda. She's also become sort of our really sort of ambassador at large. Of course, her principal function, of course, is to manage a store and be exceptional at selling all of our wares. And she does such a good job that she's pretty much shown up at all of our outposts. I don't think she hasn't had a Tokyo or Hong Kong debut yet, but maybe that needs to happen.
I think she might deserve one, actually, because Linda isn't just someone who works at Monocle. Linda is everybody's mum. So you can go to her and you can talk to her about absolutely anything, and she'll sort it out for you. And whether it's a retail requirement or just a chat, there is something rather magical about having people in your life who are a little bit like Linda. And I think you found an absolute a real gem when you found Linda, didn't you, Tyler? But she sort of encompasses the whole of Merano, because I remember it's 12, 11 years since you and I did a little bit of a radio tour of the region, didn't we? We went up mountains.
Pre-scout, yes.
Yeah, we did a little bit of a scout around. And at that point, I remember us having that conversation about what this part of the world is, that the Italian, Austrian, Prussian pull has actually sort of settled down really nicely. And then when you hear what Ed Stocker's talking about, Ed, you mentioning that people fly in from absolutely everywhere. Okay, the accessibility, something that you might have a couple of words to say about, Tyler. But the fact is, it's one of those places where everybody from everywhere comes together.
Yeah, well, listen, and this is, of course, why it is such a prosperous region, because, there's plenty of apples. They grow lots of wine. But, of course, a little bit like, of course, in valleys in Switzerland as well, they made a lot of money also charging people to get through the various passes as well. Otherwise, they would send you sort of hiking back the other direction. So hospitable, yes. They're also very good at understanding revenue management and margin as well. But it is an incredibly hospitable region, and Ed, as well, it's better connected than it used to be. Their Bolzano Airport has been fired up again. You have Sky Alps Airlines flying small Q400s. They're not flying 5 times a day into Heathrow or into Manchester, but I think there's maybe 3 flights a week to Gatwick, and then of course they're connecting many other cities. So connectivity from abroad is much better. You don't just have to fly into Innsbruck or Verona or Venice anymore.
Indeed, yeah. And there is the road as well, dare I say. Especially from where I'm coming from, Milan, it's still quite a distance, but it's a straight shot on the autostrada pretty much to Merano. So it's an easy drive, as long as there's not some big pile up of dodgy Italian driving causing a layback for hours. But yeah, it's interesting some of those things you were saying, what they get right here. They make, you mentioned apples and wine, which are incredible from this region. But, they make a lot from tourism because they get it right, and they just do it. They do it really well here. And that kind of makes people want to come back. And, living in a place where stuff shuts at lunchtime, pretty much every shop is shut at lunch. If you want to go out and buy a bottle of wine for dinner, for, a dinner party in Milan, my favorite wine shop is shut at lunch. So it's like you have to kind of go after work. Stuff stays open kind of all day here. So it's a slightly different mindset to some other parts of Italy. And it's really interesting that mix of Italian and German that you have here.
And what I didn't realise is that, and Terry, you're going to tell us about this, is that the soft power of the Südtirol is on centre court at Wimbledon.
Well, yes, Yannick Sinner, who's sort of hometown boy and is from there and reaching the first Wimbledon final. I think he's got a game against Carlos Alcaraz this afternoon, which should be absolutely fantastic. So are people excited there for the Wimbledon finals?
I haven't seen any Yannick Sinner flags flying hoisted from the rooftops of Merano. But I will look out more carefully. Actually, we were talking about trying to go and see a semi-final. We were like, well, we're in South Tyrol. We should go and check out. Go and find the game being watched somewhere to check out the hometown boy. It didn't happen in the end. We got sidetracked by all the other amazing stuff that was happening for the party. But yeah, it's an interesting time to be here. But I shall go and try and find those flags that are flying, those Sinner supporters. I'll go and track them down.
We're going to have the weirdest collection of souvenirs. I'm bringing bucket hats from Manchester, and you're bringing flags from South Tyrol. I think the Monocle Shop's we should shut its doors and lock it to stop us from getting in. Let's have a look at some of the stories that are making the news at the moment. And actually, I want to bring you into this one, Ed, because there's a brilliant feature in the New York Times about how the Italians are getting in a major panic because apparently the price of espresso is being pushed up because the price of beans is going up, and it's causing a sort of a national crisis. In addition to looking for flags, are people complaining about the price of an espresso at a counter?
Well, I tell you what, I mean, I lived in Italy for 5 years, and it is really true that it's the one thing that seems sort of untouchable. Prices, like everywhere in the world, have gone up since the pandemic. Living in Milan, you notice that, living generally is more expensive than it was. Property prices, eating out, etc. A phenomenon that is basically felt globally. And yet, the one thing you can say that is really still pretty good value in Italy is a coffee, It's like semi-untouchable. So I think it has gone up a tiny bit, but it's still incredibly good value compared to most places around the world. So it is something that is very dear to people's hearts and that is very hard to put up. Obviously, if the market pushes it up, let's see how much it's gone. It's probably gone up like 20 cents or something since I've been in Italy, like hardly anything. If it goes up much further, people are going to get upset. It's true. People want their coffee in the number of coffee shops that are in this country. It's phenomenal. So people still want to go out for their coffee. So it can't get too expensive. Otherwise, people, as I said, will be very upset indeed.
This is being borne out in this article in the New York Times. What I didn't realise, Tyler, is that Italy once designated espresso a necessity by law. It said that the government fixed the price and said that everybody had the right to drink espresso. But also, I want to talk to this man. The Italian Espresso National Institute exists. It safeguards the quality of Italian espresso. And Luigi Morello is the man that we need to start sending messages to because the whole country, he says, is rightfully alarmed. But I didn't realise that the National Institute safeguards the quality of the foam on the top of your coffee.
I mean, that's rather remarkable. And I was just going to say as well, of course, coffee is sometimes seen as a necessity, but also a luxury. I want to know, Desi, maybe this is one for us to research as well, because we can sort of rewind to pandemic times. And I think, Emma, we talked about this many times as well, just the national stockpile that, for example, I think Switzerland was sitting on 3 or 4 months supply, and I think they still do, of coffee at any one time. So there's a national stockpile in case of emergency. Of course, there's also more essential things like rice and pasta and other dry goods along with the coffee. But it is incredible how central it is and essential.
David, I'm going to bring you in on this one because it's the idea of a national identity in a small country.
Yes, the safeguarding foam is very important. I've been to that part of the world many times. I've also been in Paris where they don't safeguard foam, they safeguard the language. because in each case there's a chance of attacks from the outside world. The French language is under attack, and possibly the low-price espresso, high-quality foam is under attack. I don't know what it says about the different cultures.
It says that everybody is proud, and it's one of those things. Which countries do it best, Tyler, when you've been on your travels? The countries... David mentioned the fact that France looks after its language. The Italians are trying to look after their coffee. But you can tell, can't you, when you land somewhere, that a country has a sense of inherent pride that doesn't borderline on anything unpleasant. It's actually something rather joyful.
It is. And I think that's also where there is a sense of also being confident to stand up for a national identity and not sort of embracing everything. I think Japan has done a very good job at this. I am a little bit concerned, and we've touched on this before. Once upon a time, you'd go to Japan and there was never a sense that allergies existed. And now in the run up to the Olympics, there was obviously some sort of, program to welcome the world. Of course, the world couldn't show up in Japan for the last round of the Olympics. But now, you go to a restaurant. This never happened before. And someone would say, any allergies at the table? And I thought, my God, were there some sort of attempted class action suits or something in Japan as a result of this? Because to me, I just love the purity of Japan. It's a Japanese story. And you see, of course, just this fierce, it comes back to food and occasionally, of course, what's in your glass as well. So I think that Japan is a place which continues to do it well. But I do worry a little bit that sometimes they're sort of veering and trying to pander to maybe, a certain audience, which I think also starts to, detract from, of course, what is the Japanese identity.
It's a tricky balance to strike. I mean, just going back to I won't mention it much more, Manchester this week, but the reason I was there was to go to something to do with the European Union and the European Parliament. And there was a suggestion that it would be really nice for ambassadors and their teams to bring in something delicious to showcase to all the guests and all the delegates and what have you. And so, the Italians were going bananas with the focaccia, and I think this is a thing in 2025. The Spanish brought some really nice water and some good tortilla. And then the location that we were in, and I won't mention them, just said, you can't do that because you can't bring food onto the premises that we haven't made. Now, I'm not sure whether a tuna and sweet corn sandwich that's been sort of sitting with its corners curling up is going to be an adequate representation of either British food or indeed European food. But our little heart sank, not least, Tyler, because we'd actually got some small flags on cocktail sticks and it sounded quite fun.
Listen, I mean, there are not enough flags on hors d'oeuvres anywhere. So, listen, if they can have the array of European flags on various snacks on a tray, all for it.
Absolutely. Right. Let's talk about some of the stuff that's happening in the news at the moment. Ed, I think we can bid you a fond farewell and wish you the best of recoveries from your knees up in Merano. That was Ed Stocker in Merano there, and looking at the papers now. Terry, you wanted to talk about, I think the thing that everyone's talking about today is the European Union and Mexico being slapped with big tariffs by Donald Trump.
Yes, that's right. Again, just another sign of how tricky it really is to deal with Donald Trump, even if you think you have some kind of a deal, even if you think you have an understanding about what is going to happen, you still need to be checking your phone constantly to see whether he has then posted something on social media, suddenly announcing 30% tariffs overnight on the EU and Mexico. And EU leaders are sort of gathering on Monday anyway, which they had already planned to do, and are, I wouldn't say panicking about this, but suddenly saying, we've got to be resilient. Emmanuel Macron saying you've got to resolutely defend Europe's interests, talking about negotiating in a pragmatic manner. But it's just, another sign of the sheer unpredictability of Donald Trump, and which must be just blowing people's heads as you try to work out how on earth do you handle this.
And David, let's bring you in on this one in terms of you've written extensively about leaders and how they should behave, but perhaps a bit of advice to everybody who is trying to work out how to behave in front of Donald Trump,
yes.
Because there are two ways that seem to be adopted, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. One of them is to be terribly, terribly nice, and we'll come to what the British ambassador to the US says in a little while. Also, there is some standing up to do as well. And the European Union found itself in a bit of a pickle this week because Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the EU Commission, had calmed things down. She'd had a phone call with him last Sunday. Bad things had not happened. And then when you look at all the the noise around the discussions. You were hearing the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and this idea that Europe was ready to stand up to him. And I wonder whether it was that second approach, the standing up to the bully, which didn't work.
I think you're entirely right. People are trying two different approaches to come in, but there's a weakness or a problem that everybody finds. If you come in with a submissive approach, you maybe get a certain accord, and if you come in with an aggressive approach, you can maybe get another accord. The problem with all of these accords is once I make an accord with somebody else, there's a constraint. I'm supposed to follow that accord. Trump, I suppose the only constant in his life, he doesn't like constraints. So whenever there is an agreement, he has to break it. So one of his one of his drivers is to insult that which is weak. His niece and many other people have thought that's because he obviously feels weak. So Denmark, Canada, if he can insult a country that feels polite and decent and weak, that's very important for him. But the other one is with the moment you make an accord, he has to break it because that's a constraint. If he then follows the accord, that means if I make an accord with him, he and I are on a level of equality. I have like a control over him, and he doesn't want that for anybody.
What if he makes the accord himself? And do you have to convince? Does one have to convince Donald Trump that it was all his idea all along?
So I think to set up the accord, that's probably a way to do it, and it will last for a little while. But then if somebody says to him, "Oh, Mr. Trump, you signed yourself to this and you agreed to that," he hates that.
Tyler, let's bring you in from the European, the Swiss view on this one. Obviously, Europe reeling at the news of 30% tariffs, but also from the position that David was talking about, politeness, decency, equated with weakness. Is that a correct analogy, do you think?
Well, listen, of course, Switzerland has its own special relationship between Bern and Brussels. That is one thing. I was actually talking to someone who's involved in trade talks between the United States and Switzerland, and of course, this is a country which is playing a bit of a balancing act because, of course, much being exported also on the when we think about sort of the digital economy side, and this is sort of interesting. We look at Canada's position with this whole digital tax that Canada has been attempting to push through on the big players. Here, I mean, this, or sitting in Zurich, it's a massive hub for Google, big presence from the likes of Meta. And the country also, really trying to, of course, push itself because of schools like ETH, which is the German part of the technical university, federal technical university here in Zurich. Of course, it has to have strong links to the U.S. West Coast. So, and of course, Switzerland's not alone in this. But it means that there is, I think that one Swiss flight, I believe, that goes from there's a United flight from Geneva to Washington, the Zurich flight from Zurich to DC, are incredibly busy right now with various conversations to, of course, and we can't ignore, of course, Christmas is coming up, Emma.
What?
Watches, and fine jewels are also part of this story as well. When we look at, of course, what types of tariffs might emerge or be slapped on top of shiny baubles.
Indeed, and those ideas, Terry, of bringing in that sort of second, that sort of the punitive tariffs, the retaliatory measures by the European Union, while Switzerland's trying to sort of plough its own way. But when you look at the European Union and threatening to go back with something in return, there's a big problem for the European Union at the moment, which is it's not competitive enough, and it's very, very aware of the fact that it's not competitive enough. If you look at something like tech companies, only 4 of the 50 world's biggest tech companies are European, and I wonder whether the tariff Trump saga is that wake-up call to make Europe just work itself out and decide its own fate.
Yes, and I think there was a very interesting section when Emmanuel Macron was talking to the British Parliament this week, and he was making this big speech in excellent English, but saying that one of the things that both the UK and France and other European countries had to do was to try to distinguish themselves from both the United States and other countries like China. And he was talking about, the importance of not being dependent on just a US algorithm, for instance, that made Europe vulnerable, and to try to, to raise that, their level of competitiveness and the level of what they were doing. And that was really quite a key theme that he was talking about there. I mean, it was less clear. It was more about the rhetoric and less clear on how you actually do that. But that was certainly something that he was trying to do in terms of appealing to the British audience there.
You're listening to Monocle on Sunday. The time here in London is 9:30. It's 10:30 where our editorial director Tyler Brûlé is. Let's have a quick look at the headlines. The European Union and Mexico have expressed disappointment after President Trump said he'd impose a 30% tariff on their exports from the 1st of August. India's civil aviation minister has urged people not to jump to any conclusions after an initial report into last month's Air India plane crash revealed the plane's fuel switches had been turned off, with one pilot asking the other if he'd cut fuel to the engines. Thousands of South Korean medical students have announced they'll return to their lessons, ending a 17-month-long boycott. And a 600-kilo bull that escaped through a fence on Thursday morning, triggering an alert on Alert Swiss that an aggressive bull was out of control in Neuchâtel, has been captured. The bull was eventually found in a pen surrounded by several cows. Tyler, this has been something that everybody's been going bananas for, apparently, all week.
What, that he could sort of end up on a grill or...
Well, no, there's this thing called Alert. I'm not aware of what Alert Swiss is. And I don't know how I would feel if something came through to my phone saying, watch out, there's an aggressive bull out of control in my neighbourhood.
Well, yeah, so Alert Swiss is a system which has existed for some time. Of course, Emma, you know that we've done stories on this in the past as well. Of course, when they test the national siren system here as well, it's always interesting that you see young men from the civil defence forces climbing up various posts and ladders and going atop chimneys to make sure that, of course, the alert, sort of the almost analog system still functions as well. But of course, there's an app-based system too. So, in case if there's a weather incident, if there's a security incident, clearly the case with the bull, you will get an alert on your phone, and you'll be told to take cover. Or fire up the barbecue, whatever the case may be.
Excellent. Find some tarragon and make a nice sauce. It's an interesting thing that they use it for angry bulls. One would imagine, would any other nation dare to do that? Or it depends on the anger of the bull, I suppose.
Yeah, that's part of it. No, it's a peculiar, probably Swiss setup. But it is interesting because I was just reading, of course, in the UK, they're of course looking at a system right now as well. Of course, for these national alerts, you've seen so many countries now have this because we don't all have transistor radios sitting on our windows. Yet at the same time, it is remarkable. We're actually working on a story right now. James Chambers is doing a piece about just there aren't very many companies left in the world that make just traditional radios which are tuned to FM, AM, whatever it may be. But these are still the backbone, of course, for various emergency systems all over the world. If things really, really go wrong, and of course your whole mobile network, no longer functions, we're probably still going to have to rely on traditional radio. So how many people still have, that? And it's interesting when you look at the goodies that should be in your emergency box in your bunker, what you need to have sort of stored in Switzerland. A traditional battery operated radio is one of them.
Let's bring in Terry, because you've just written a book about spying, counterculture, and I suspect there are quite a lot of radios used in the Second World War.
Yes, I mean, the book that I wrote called Believable Lies is really about how they used radio propaganda going out from Britain into occupied Europe during the Second World War. And the technology of it was absolutely key, because you forget that in the 1930s and 40s, radio was such a new technology. I mean, it was really going to work at the BBC was like going to work at Google or Facebook or something might have been. It was a brand new thing. But they initially couldn't reach that many people in Europe because they were only broadcasting on shortwave. And it wasn't until later on in the war when they built this massive transmitter called the Aspidistra transmitter that was so powerful that it knocked out radio signal for miles around that they could broadcast on medium wave essentially further into Europe. And because of the way that the radio waves worked, they could reach North Africa, but only at night because the radio waves went first. And the essential thing about that was trying to communicate British propaganda sort of in heavy disguise, pretending to be other things and with an element of fake news into the rest of Europe. But that was a key thing that they were trying to do.
What were they telling people?
Well, some of it was what they called white propaganda at the time, which was sort of the BBC and telling people the truth. Some of it was black propaganda, which included deliberate fake news. So it had lies in it and was trying to spread rumours about illnesses or scandals or the German leadership, telling people that really all is lost and you can't trust your leadership. But the bigger question of the book really is whether that was the right thing to do or whether you actually needed more to try and build trust in the people who were listening to it.
David?
I'm struck that when people dream, we often have crazy thoughts. You try to tell the dream in normal life. First of all, your audience is usually very bored. But if you can get it across without the boredom, you have these like wild thoughts which are inconsistent with the way you live an ordinary life. Black propaganda works in World War II and, of course, very, very much now with China and Russia and stuff by touching those parts of us, which it won't work if it tries to touch something that is not there. It has to resonate, kind of like a radio frequency resonates. But the skilled people, Donald Trump, some very good propagandists, they'll find something waiting inside, lurking, which we often might not even like, but is ready to respond. Teenage boys, for example, will respond to calls to be big and strong because of their terrible fear of being small and weak. Homeowners will respond to certain deep things which you might not want to say in real life, but which is there. The TV series House, the producers of it, that excellent TV series, it's about a doctor who is very exciting to listen to because they just said doctors will often say quietly among themselves certain things they would never say to the patient. Imagine he actually says it to the patient, saying out loud what you ordinarily think. There's a feeling that it's honest, but of course it's really dangerous.
Let's head to Helsinki. We can hear from our correspondent, Petri Bertsov. Good morning, Petri.
Good morning, Emma. We don't have any 600-kilo bulls here, but we do have some really big seals in Finland.
We'll come to the seals in a moment. I can't wait. Just first, though, just listening to what Terry and David have just been talking about and bring Tyler in on this one as well, because it has to do with Estonia. I have a friend who grew up in communist Estonia, and everybody used to head to the topmost part of Tallinn because they could all get television signals from Finland. Because the Finns, you were broadcasting the juicy stuff to the Estonians, weren't you?
Yes, well, we were just broadcasting real news as opposed to what they were broadcasting in the Soviet occupied Estonia. That's exactly right. I've heard those stories many times. And that's actually the reason why older Estonians quite often speak actually fluent Finnish. I mean, the languages are sort of similar, but not really sort of understandable to each other. But older Estonians often, because they've grown up secretly watching Finnish TV and listening to Finnish public broadcasting radio, so they speak really good Finnish.
Tyler, do you have anything to say with knowing that? Let's plug into your Estonian heritage. Are there any stories coming back from the family about this?
Well, listen, of course, we were running quite a trade on some specific ships out of Montreal, of course, trying to get as much propaganda into Estonia in those years. I can remember, boxes being sent on ships like the Alexander Pushkin. Used to have Russian ships that used to come, and these were passenger and cargo ships that used to come into Montreal. This is the 1970s, and I can always remember that various items of truth were often sort of bundled into again, coming back to coffee, into a bag of coffee or whatever else, and I can remember that we would send like so much denim to relatives because that's what they had to that's what they could sell. So yeah, remarkable time.
Amazing. And
I don't think we were in the business. I mean, we were even talking. This is pre VHS at that point.
Yeah, but we've got the radio, and everybody just wants a pair of jeans. It's quite astonishing. Petri, you mentioned seals. Here we go. Off the floor. The airwaves are yours.
Okay, the airways on the FM radio too, hopefully. So this is the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, calling on Finland to have its seal hunting quota. So you might think, why are Finns hunting hunting seals. That's because seals in Finland actually cause a lot of fishery losses, and it's quite a traditional way of life, has been for centuries, if not millennia, especially in the sort of the Lake District and eastern Finland. But Finland has recently increased its hunting quota from 370 seals per year to about 425, whereas the World Wildlife Fund argues that Finland should actually halve the quota. So there's a bit of a conflict. The Finnish government arguing that, well, you know, the population is actually has grown steadily, and now the numbers are in the tens of thousands, so it's okay to hunt a little bit, whereas the WWF, you know, not exactly surprisingly arguing that no, that's not the case, that we need more of them. And the WWF, they have a nice argument. They say that there's this TV show in Finland called Norppa Life. Norppa is the Finnish word for the seal. It's a live stream. It's a slow TV, 24/7 slow TV, where they basically just broadcast the seals bathing in the sun in the Lake District in the summer. And that's a really popular TV show. And now they say they highlight the popularity of this show as a reason to not kill the seals, essentially.
Oh, right. So basically, look at our lovely seals. Please don't cull them. David, that raised a smile on your face.
Yes, it's. I was speaking to somebody who likes hunting animals for fun. And they said, well, what's the argument against it? And I said, well, without arguing, let's spend a while watching an animal grow, watching it at birth and watching it being nurtured. If it's a mammal, watching it be fed, and then do that for several months and then try to kill the animal. So I was struck by that TV show. You can basically, the WWF loves things with eyebrows. Things with eyebrows are hard to get rid of.
Tyler, how are the eyebrows in Zurich?
They're not raised. I'm looking at our producer Desi here, wondering if we can bring our Fiona Wilson in, because I can remember buying Fiona Wilson a pair of sealskin booties at the Greenland shop in Copenhagen. So I'm thinking, Petri, how many booties can we make out of 400 sealskins? Because there's a market for this for sure.
Yes, maybe I should launch one. Maybe run it at the St. George Hotel and to all the lovely tourists. But the funny thing is, I mean, you know, Finns hunt for seals, but people don't eat the seal meat. I haven't seen any seal products being sold. They're all, I mean, you've been to Helsinki, you know, it's all like reindeer skins and furs and bear as well. But seals is not a thing yet.
Well,
but thanks for that tip.
Not yet. I think there is definitely room.
Okay, so we got the 600 kilo bull. That's on Tyler's barbecue. I don't think I've ever contemplated what you would do with a seal, but you do have to ask if you're going to cull them. Apart from a rather fine selection of seal booties, Petri, what do they do with them?
That's a really good question. I have no idea, Emma. I'm sure they don't serve it as a spicy crab like the one we had in London last week. But maybe that's a tasty meal. I wonder if it's as messy to eat as the spicy crab was.
Yes, we did. So I think we have to explain to everyone that Petri and I had dinner last week. It was yourself, myself, Marcus Hippie, late of this parish, sat down and ate crabs, and we broke the restaurant, didn't we? Well, we tried trying to get into the crabs.
Yes, that's right. They had to move us to another table at the end of the dinner.
Yes, we literally broke St. John. Yes, go for it, David.
There's a danger when one does this. There's something called crabification. I'm not making this up.
Seriously?
Yes, there is. And it turns out that quite a few species have evolved in the direction of crabs. That they weren't like crabs and they become like crabs because it's incredibly functional. In the way that certain mammals that went into the sea become streamlined, the way that fish were, it's convergent evolution. So there's several things that end up with those armored shells, and one bigger than the other, and the eyes like that, and sometimes the moving sideways. So I just worry that if you and your two friends spend too long at the table, when you get home, they might not recognize you.
That I'll be crabification. What's the verb again?
Crabification.
Crabification. Tyler, how have we heard of time?
I don't know. I thought crabification was something that happened in the workplace with certain colleagues, especially when the temperature rises. But anyway.
Petri, we've started a little thing, though, that every time Petri and I have dinner together, we sort of help each other with the menu. Last time, you made me order a sort of a 2-litre bucket of salmon and cream soup, didn't you? And then I helped you with the trifle this week.
Yes, and then we were at Seahorse, which of course Tyler knows, and we had the squeaky cheese that Tyler has also tried. I remember sitting next to him with some fine company and digging into that squeaky cheese. But Emma, you for some reason weren't a big fan of the squeaky cheese and custard, the liter of custard that it was swimming in.
Yes, so I think that might have been the reason. So
hold on, I need to intervene. I don't think I've gone anywhere near. And if I saw streaky and cheese, even if it was in Finnish, even if it was an Estonian, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. Petri, this you were with obviously one of your other editors or chairman of one of the other media companies that you work with, because that was not me. I am very, very strict. I'm only having steak a la seahorse when I'm at Seahorse.
See, I wasn't allowed to do that. Well, I actually sort of placed myself in the care of Petri. I said, right, this is my first time at Seahorse. Order for me. Just give me something that just surprise me. And there was an awful lot of sap. There was quite a lot of fish. There was quite a lot of cream. And then at the end, there was a bowl of custard with a piece of what I could only describe as Finnish halloumi, just going for a little float around it. There's some cloudberry jam, just to sort of add to the general yellowy beiginess of it. But it is which is one of the strangest things I've ever eaten, Petri.
Yeah, not exactly a low cholesterol treat there for you. But yeah, you didn't actually have the steak. You didn't have the steak a la seahorse. I thought, because that's what everybody from Monocle always has, and it's a lovely dish. Don't get me wrong. I think it might even have a Tyler's name on the menu. But I just thought you might be the one Monocle person that doesn't have the steak. So you had salmon soup instead. Plus, I think you had quite a heavy lunch before that.
Have you just said boring, Tyler?
I might have. Listen. Okay, seals. They're not quite seahorses, but I am wondering: is there room for seal on the menu at Seahorse in Helsinki? I think we've solved it, Petri.
Yes, I'm actually about a few blocks away from Seahorse. I'm gonna walk in there right now and pitch this idea. And I'm gonna mention your name, Tyler.
Thank you. I could have a second mention on the menu. Fantastic.
Is there anything else that hang on a minute. Would that mean that you would shift from steak a la seahorse to seal as a la seahorse?
No, I don't think so. But we have just Petri, very, very quickly, we have one viewer in the audience here in Zurich this morning who is very, very keen on the Tesla story, because I think he sort of solved his Tesla dilemma. He's hoping that maybe we have some Norwegian listeners who will come and pay Swiss franc prices for his that he wants to offload. Just tell us, you teased us with a story from Norway about the Tesla. What's happening there?
Yeah, so as you know, Tesla sales are dipping all over the world, and in Europe in particular, but Norway is bucking the trend. They're actually obsessed with Teslas. Tesla's Model Y.
On trend Norway.
On trend Norway, exactly. Tesla's Model Y was Norway's best-selling car last year. And Norway is just nuts about electric cars in general. I mean, Tesla isn't the most popular, but they buy other electric vehicles as well. And the Tesla sales grew by 54% in June, but year by year in Norway. So if you want to get rid of your Tesla, Norway is the place to go and sell it to. And for somebody from Switzerland, I think the prices are about the same, two of the richest countries in the world. So that might be a good place to go and sell it.
I'm going to tell this to our neighbours.
Lots of nods in the front row here.
So many nods in London as well. We have one of the people who has a car in the car park under our flat has a Tesla, and it's like the aliens have landed every time they go out to the shops. It's absolutely the strangest sound you've ever heard. It's as if it doesn't sound like a vehicle at all, and it's just horrible. Actually, I don't mean to say that, but why you'd ever have a car that had a strange noise just to say hello, a Tesla is coming, I don't know. Terry, do you have a Tesla?
I don't have a Tesla. No, I've got a very old VW. It was a hybrid, so it's a little bit electric. We tend to still use mostly the petrol, but it's good. It's not as cheap to run as it used to be, because you used to, if you had a car that was a little bit electric, you get everything for free in London in terms of parking. And now they've realised that you're not entirely doing good things for the planet, so you have to pay up
and get a Tesla. David, in the way that we have crabification, are we getting Tesla regret now?
Well, we're getting, sadly, muskification. Okay. You know how people often look like their dogs and spouses end up looking like each other? So what you were describing about the Tesla car, this strange alien creature that makes odd sounds, I thought you were describing Mr. Musk himself. The electric cars are really different from ordinary cars. Ordinary cars have big engines and drive shafts and stuff. Electric cars are basically skateboards. They're skateboards with little motors by the windows, and on top of it, you can build almost whatever you want. They have very, very few moving parts. So the Tesla can be like a fun thing, can have like party mode or this or that. And you strip bare, you create from scratch. And that's Musk's attitude. And many people love it. They love the idea of stripping bare, resetting, and starting from scratch. The danger is you throw out many decent things. In America, for example, medical research or USAID, but it's attractive for people who aren't thinking of the consequences.
And Tyler, they're not thinking of comfortable seats at the back of the Tesla, are they?
Well, there's never been a comfortable seat in the back of the Tesla. That is for sure. Anyone who's had to sit in the back of a Tesla will know it's like sitting on a laptop. Don't even get me started. I could spend a lot of time. Or we could bring our Jonathan Ducre up here as well. I'm sure he would have plenty to say on the topic.
Are they big on Teslas in Zurich? I haven't seen many.
There's enough of them. I don't think we had sort of that Norwegian explosion. I don't think that Switzerland was one of the early adopters in the way that we saw, certainly with our other non-EU friends up on the western end of Scandinavia. But they are around. I mean, to me, it's like sort of the Tesla has sort of become a little bit like what Skechers have become for the service industry. That sort of Skechers is the shoe of a lot of service staff, whether you're in hospitals, whether you're in a restaurant. And I think Tesla is the same thing, whether you're driving for Bolt or whether you're driving for Uber. It has sort of become sort of that constant, the upgrade vehicle that you get when you're with any of these ride-sharing services. And I think that's also been, probably some of the challenge to the value of the vehicle is as well. It's sort of seen as having sort of a bit of a utility service component to it.
And if it ends up being branded as a car which is used in the sort of the service industry, it's never going to reach the wonderful levels of Uber luxury that some of its German competitors might.
No, correct. And again, that is a whole other topic as well. If we want to talk about, how Germany or Deutschland Incorporated has really squandered an opportunity in all of this, and maybe sort of reflective of where Germany is politically. I'm not sure which came first, but if you could sort of say that obviously, literally, the automotive side is such an engine. There's going to be many books, if they're not being written now, about just this crisis of confidence that we've seen in Germany. On one side, sort of running headlong after for electrification, for political reasons, the dial back that is also happening around that now. But anyway, that's good. Those books are all coming out again in time for Christmas.
I think you're just about to write one, aren't you, David Bodanis?
Funny you should mention this. It's not a whole book, but I imagine you're an auto executive in Germany, and you have petrol cars. And there's two possibilities. One is to encourage your engineers to lie and cheat and fake the emissions production of your cars, in which case you can keep similar cars to before and just manipulate the system a little bit. The other possibility is to go from scratch and trust that you building a new industry from scratch, the electric industry, will be better than anybody on earth. And sadly, in that case, most of Germany failed. They flinched at it. And indeed, much of the U.S. failed also. It's much more tempting to modify what you already have. And it's a terrific thing to start from scratch.
And this will cost Germany. Sorry, Tyler, do carry on.
No, I was just going to say, which is why I'm getting my diesel fueled Japanese car to drive up to the mountains tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine. But talking about country branding for a seal barbecue, talking about country branding and cars, Terry, you wanted to talk to us about the UK ambassador Peter Mandelson.
Yes.
So he's made the headlines. He's done an interview.
He's done a big interview for the Sunday Times, and it actually kicks off with him taking an Aston Martin and whizzing it around the port of Baltimore because he started driving laps around the port, and the security people got a bit upset about this because he was whizzing around in an Aston Martin Vanquish. But he was making the point there that this is one of like 200 American orders of cars, and saying that Aston Martin was benefiting obviously from the tariff differentials, saying that British products are going to have, well, at time of the interview being done, a 17.5% competitive advantage over Mercedes and Ferraris. And interestingly, Mandelson is trying to sort of hold the line, saying it's a good question on whether this is a Brexit benefit. Could they have done this deal before that? But obviously, trying to sell British cars, particularly high-end luxury ones like Aston Martin, into the US is a key thing for him. But, obviously, there's still the difficulties of negotiating the tariffs. And I think it's quite interesting also because Mandelson, obviously someone who's politically been around the block many, many times, and how it just sort of the superficiality of dealing with Trump, how that basically he seemed to suddenly get on with Trump once he walked into the Oval Office and Trump said, "This is a handsome guy," and then opinions may differ, and then everybody else in the MAGA world seemed to be then really nice to him and think that he was lovely and charming, and went from calling him an absolute moron to suddenly being all friends and all smiles. But he said, for someone who's seen a lot of politics, he's never been in a town or a political system that is so dominated by one individual.
And this also talks a lot about Peter Mandelson, doesn't it, Tyler? The idea that this is someone who is an absolute architect of New Labour, was a voice there, and his ability to transform and to pivot to what is needed is phenomenal.
It is. And anyone who's spent any time with Mr. Mandelson, I think many people within the walls of Midori House have one word that just comes to mind is smooth. And he is there for all of the right reasons. And if anyone can sort of get this done and can maneuver. Let's see. But I can't think, if you're going to sort of just say, I'm going to put sort of a clunky technocrat in DC who might have had an amazing sort of, diplomatic career, that's not going to fly.
How much does smooth work, David?
Peter Mandelson is known for being smooth, but his inner motivation, he has many, but one is his grandfather. His grandfather was Herbert Morrison, the guy who helped create Transport for London and great educational programs in London in the 1930s and 40s, really created terrific things. It meant a lot to him. And Mandelson's grandfather, during the First World War, was a conscientious objector, didn't want to go. And so he was sent into a really rough prison camp. But it turned out Mandelson's grandfather was also blind in one eye. And if he had told the selection group during the First World War that, he wouldn't have been sent to prison at all. He intentionally, when he had to speak about it, stood to the side so they couldn't see his blind eye. And so Mandelson grew up knowing that, yes, you have to manipulate, twist and turn, but A, you want to do something good at the end, improving London in the 1930s, and B, there comes a time when your conscience is important. Now, this has been tested a little bit in Mandelson's history, but it is there lurking within. We shall see how he deals with it.
Do we feel, everybody, that Peter Mandelson will do some good for not just the United Kingdom, but for diplomacy in general? Because it's having to reinvent itself left, right and centre. Terry, do you want to talk about that?
Yes. I mean, I think, it was unusual. It's something that Britain hadn't done since I think the 70s, to have a politician go and be ambassador to Washington. I think some people had qualms about that potentially, but I think he does seem to be the right person in the right place, and that this sort of combination of being quite smooth and emollient but also understanding the politics of it does seem to be a pretty good choice as far as we've seen at the moment.
And Tyler, let's bring you in as well in terms of country branding and whether actually people who come from different walks of life and who end up in either politics or who started in politics and ended up somewhere else, how much does that add to the understanding that, does it actually work in your view?
Well, I guess if we're talking about ambassadorial post or at least having sort of one of the top 2 or 3 jobs in mission, I think then you have to then also look at where those missions are. If they're with your sort of 5, 6, 7 most important partners, those might be important partners from a security perspective. They might be important partners from an economic perspective. You need people in post who, let's face it, at the end of the day, what are you doing there as a diplomat? It is a sales job. It is a sales representation job by and large. Of course, you might have to, if you're a Finnish ambassador, you're replacing passports for drunk Finnish kids in Florida. That's sort of a bit of the sideshow. But I think that is, you want someone, I think, who has private sector experience, who understands the art of closing a deal, and not in a Trump way. We're just talking about in an elegant way in terms of course, firing up trade, understanding the bilaterals. And then I come back to, actually, that's where smooth works. You talk about good negotiators, people who can sell a product generally have a level of smoothness about them. And I think we forget that right now. I think we're looking for people who are sort of technically good, but can they host a great cocktail party? Does anyone want to stand behind them or stand beside them at a reception? If that's a no, then they're probably the wrong person for the post.
15 seconds each here in London. Thanks for that, Tyler. But David, the idea of growing a new generation of people who can not only do the technicals, but can also mix a really good cocktail.
In the future, it's one of the few things our AI overlords might be mediocre at.
How about you, Terry?
I think it's a learned skill, and it's one that we need to not forget when everybody is sort of glued to their screens all the time, that actually meeting people in real life can change things quite quickly.
Thank you both for that. That's all the time we have for today's Made Up As We Went Along programme. Tyler, we've got 10 seconds to say goodbye. Goodbye from Zurich.
Yeah, goodbye from Zurich. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. I'm sure we'll correspond, Emma.
We will, and enjoy your trip up to the mountains for your seal barbecue. Thanks, obviously, to our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, for holding fort in Zurich, and my guest, Ed Stocker, on the line from Merano, Terry Stiastny and David Bodanis in the studio, and Petri Burtsoff on the line in Helsinki. Thanks to our producer Desiree Bandley, Mariella Bevan, and our studio engineer Mariella Bevan here in London, Desi in Zurich. I'm Emma Nelson. Monocle on Sunday returns next week, but until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Goodbye. Thanks for listening.